So they'll be calling you a radical. So Fukushima, 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 the discrimination against Japanese descent. It's Asian month, and this conversation should have happened a long time ago. We grew up in post-World War II United States. We know the racism against the Japanese. Come on, let's get real. The Japanese emperor, he was beyond evil. They didn't do anything to him, did they? He lived in Manhattan his whole life. You know, he was 24 years old when he was doing the Potomac Death March. Sure wasn't the Japanese peasants, but the Japanese people. Let's talk about discrimination of the Japanese culture and the Japanese people. And very real, very real. I was just doing some work on Ali Hamaker, you know, because he was Japanese Carmel. My grandson's named after that, you know. Born that same month as Fukushima, you know, the Japanese word, intuitive. So let's talk about it. This pisses me off. Nobody discriminates harder against Asian culture than Weber State University. Now the trainers here, I'm friends with them both. They're from Japan. They're the ones that have schooled me up a lot. I'm friends with them both, Yo and Mo, about the word Kobe. We've had lots of conversations about that, what different, you know, terms. The first player of color in the history of the NBA. Now we know what first generation Japanese were called in the United States, but there were lots of them here in Ogden, Utah. They were produce farmers when I was a kid. Our neighbors, the Sakamotos, my next door neighbors, they were produce farmers. You know, my dad was a produce farmer, you know, his name Digger. Fantastic people. You know, the Miyas, the Sakamotos, the Yokomotos, all of them, so many incredible people. So, Watt, who's the first player of color in the history of the NBA? Wabasuki. So, Masaki. Watt Masaki was born and raised in Ogden, Utah. This is an incredible story. And this is how pissed off, because a filmmaker made a movie, blah, blah. It was supposed to debut right there in the Wildcat Theater. The Weber State Library, the old guard there, put out the posters and the documentaries and put the wrong address, so nobody showed up. They moved it and didn't tell anybody. This is how fucked up the old guard at the Weber State Library. Now, the Weber State Library, as you saw the video yesterday, the young people are folding paper cranes in there. There's a whole new breed. Things are changing. So when we grew up, it's about geography, right? People were geographically illiterate. So the discrimination after the bomb, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, before that, the invasion of Pearl Harbor. We know the slang. They went for the Japanese and the incredible hate. The Japanese people never did that. That was the monarchy. You know, the Japanese emperor. He was the emperor. He wasn't called president. He was called the Japanese emperor. So this story is so important. He's the first player of color in the history of the NBA. Everybody around here knew him. What a gentleman. What a gem. He played on Weber State's basketball team. The old gym down there at the Deseret Gym with Jim. He grew up right down the road. This is an incredible story. This is important for Asian Heritage Week month. And, you know, there's a lot of talk finally about this discrimination. So after World War II, of course, Korea. My dad was drafted into Korea. And human lab right in about a test site, and it killed him. So the piggyback off the discrimination against the Japanese into the discrimination against the Koreans. And if you know what the United States did to the North Koreans, you will understand why they hate us. Well, that just didn't come from nowhere. What the Marines did and what people did there, and then the hardcore battles in the history of the United States were at the Keyshawn Reservoir. You know, MacArthur went in. My dad was one of those Special Forces Marine blood and guts. I mean, oh my God, what a dude. You know, his friends I used to wear his dog tags for years. They'd kiss him. They hated MacArthur, what they did to him. You know, at the Keyshawn Reservoir, he said they had Chinese bodies stacked up, using them as building igloos out to try to keep warm. They all had frostbite. They're all the Hell's Kitchen. The Chinese sent in battalion after battalion after battalion. So many men that they didn't even have weapons. They were fighting with sticks and bayonets. They were murdering so many of them, and that was MacArthur going in when his fucking arrogance. That was hatred for, and the American populace went because they couldn't tell you Japanese from Asians, Japanese from Chinese, from Koreans, from Filipinos. I mean, think about Teddy Roosevelt the discrimination, it perpetuated to multi-wars. Same thing happened with people of Arabic descent. You know, the whole Iran-Contra manufactured bullshit raised them against Iranians. Ayatollah is an Asahola. Remember when we used to wear those hats around? You know, that whole manufacture, which evolved into, went off to Afghanistan to kill the Taliban, went off to Iraq to get a big old sack. People around here used to have freaking bumper stickers saying, "Glass the whole region." Glass the whole region? What are you talking about? There were Saudis that flew the planes in, a lot of them right on this campus. They detained 5. They interviewed, KSL interviewed them right over there. I worked here. They had the library sealed off immediately. You know, they were Saudis. They had nothing to do with Iraq. They had nothing to do with Afghanistan. The 20-year perpetual lie. It's how it works. Geographically illiterate people, easy to exploit. So let's talk about what this university is discriminating against native Ogdenites. He's a native Ogden. So is Fawn McKay Brody. So is Kevin Blank. The discrimination against native Ogden, Utah, taxpaying, born and raised here is disgusting. Fawn McKay Brody, 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 the greatest female writer in American history, the first female dean, the greatest female historian in history, professor here. Talk about discrimination. Professor at Weber State University at 17 years old in that same area as Watt. So Watt's living on 25th Street. His mom and dad, he's born and raised there right on 25th. He's 18 years old. He's playing basketball for Weber State College, fresh out of Ogden High. 5'7" jump hook. He wore number 77 at Weber. Won 2 national championships at Weber. 2 national championships at Weber. 2 national champions. He's the launch of this story, you know. Johnny Farron, his friend, he never played here. Ogden High. You know, we can get into that. Vern Garner, who, that great player, he taught school at Bonneville High School, but what? So when Pearl Harbor happens, he's sent home from school at the Weber Academy, which was owned by the Mormon Church then, at Ogden High. He was an 18-year-old. Everybody was sent home in the whole country of Japanese descent. There's a term they use, I won't use it, for second generation. The first generation's nomaders, you know, they had to live nomadically for the most part, you know. So, he goes home. He goes to school the next day. He said, never once did I have any discrimination problems in Utah. Never once any discrimination problems in Utah. Putting in the new tracks line. It's going to go right through the buildings. Between them. I think we're going to get the pond saved. I'm working on it. So, Weber, when he used to be Weber. This is how disgusting this is. Should be statues of him, Fawn McKay Brody. Tim says, well, we're going to put statues. We're going to put Watt there. We're going to put Fawn there. We're going to put you there, Kevin Blanch. Yeah, right, when hell freezes over. Yeah, because they hate native Ogdenites. So, they're in turning. Santa Anita Racetrack, Corey Nakatani talks about it, the great jockey so bad. And that's how he came. His mom and dad was put in internment camps. They rounded them up all over, not in Ogden. Watt said, not once was I discriminated in Ogden, Utah. You're talking one of the great boom cities, had more different denominations of churches, and right there where he lived than anywhere on earth. Never did he have discrimination. I'll tell you how different we were. It was President Dixon, I believe. He went to him, and he's 18 years old. First player of color in the history of the NBA. 1947. It's funny how the NBA will tell you 1 minute the first season was 47, and the next one they'll tell you it's 49. I can get into that whole gig. So, he went to the president of the university. He says, well, my cousins live in Los Angeles, and they're being rounded up and they're put in the internment camp at Santa Anita Racetrack in Pasadena, at Arcadia. President Dixon of Weber State got into his car and he drove to Los Angeles, to Arcadia, got his cousins who were 18, 19 years old, brought them here to Weber State, gave them a job, and let them live in his house. Okay, that's how that's the Ogden, Utah that I grew up in. So diverse, so diverse, so diverse. Not now. Look at it now. Why? They don't even have his number retired. Damian Lillard, we love Damian Lillard. Let's get real. We love Damian Lillard. I know Damian Lillard personally. I did the play-by-play when he played here. But come on. Why is there not a statue of Watt? He just passed away not very long ago. What a gentleman. Oh, he's not University of Utah. He's Ogden. He's ours. Weber State. Just like Fawn McKay Brody. Just like Kevin Blanche. It's disgusting. Who's calling these shots around here? Bunch of fucking racists. If you don't think that, well, looks like to me they're racist against Ogdenites. So, he's of Asian descent, but he's born and raised. We're all invaders and foreigners, unless you've got native bloodlines. I see they rededicated, Cherokees. How much videos have I done out there? After the fact, always after the fact. So, it's important historical work. Until I see a statue of Fawn McKay Brody right in front of the Weber State Library, and a statue of Watt in front of the DESENT Center, and one in Ogden, right there in front of the old Deseret Gym that's been vacant for 20 years, the grandest building in all of Utah. You can all kiss my ass at Weber State University. The young students are folding 1,000 paper cranes inside the library. I wonder where they got that idea. I got a hold of the first one. There's a new guard. People are done with your racism. They've had it. They've had it with your blackballing. What about Dr. Cooley? How come there's not a statue of him when we're in the #1 school? Because he died in that crowd. I took over and saved the program. Look how they blackball me. It's important. For water school business. #1 when I taught there. David O. McKay, I knew him personally. President March he'd roll in his grave. Ezra Taft Penson's flipped this whole culture. So until Weber State can put up a statue of Watt and Fawn, Tim right there, bookstore's right there. The first bookstore manager was, Marriott, him. That's where I live. And so that's where I grew up. My grandma, Adelia and Myra, Tracy, and Jay Merritt, same age, live right next door. They're produce store. They're organic farmers. Multi-generation ones. We're all immigrants. But they lived in symphony with the Shoshone. A lot of the early Mormon gamers lived in symphony. But Stewart murdered Chief Cherokee. They retaliated and took the oldest living elder in the region. Yeah, his name was Blanche. Little soldier himself, who was friends with him, put an arrow through his heart. He's buried right next door to my dad. So, enough of the discrimination. Until Weber State can recognize that he wore number 77 at Weber. 2 national championships, 5'7" jump hook. There's actually footage out there. I mean, you can find it, on the J. Marriott archives. So until I see a statue of Fawn right there in front of the famous Weber State Library. They're folding paper cranes, the young ones in there. She folded 605 Sudoku. Enola Gay flew out of Utah. We had the ceremony. They presented the crane. I got it. So did my grandson, who's named Japanese. And my daughter didn't even know the name was Japanese. He was born right after Fukushima happened. Japanese word for beauty and strength. And so until I see Weber State, it's the Board of Regents. Nobody's from here. Until I see them give up their racism, that's what it is. Well, there's discrimination. I shouldn't say racism. They're incredible discrimination. against anti-nuclear activists, against counterculturists. Fama K. Brody, Fama K. Brody, Fama K. Brody, Fama K. Brody, Fama K, Fama K. Yeah, David O. McKay's niece, born and raised here. Freaking young female professor here. First dean of history in the history of the United States. So I see a statue of her right here. You can deal with me and my YouTube camera. John Huntsman to Kevin Blanche. Well, I'm just a poor, broke down cancer victim activist fighting ban leaf blowers. Ban leaf blowers. To the billionaire who, what about Fukushima? Yeah, I was in China when it happened. Well, now you're screaming your head off. He speaks Chinese. He speaks Japanese. Why don't you screaming your head off? You're a billionaire. Collected the data on the Russian Sea when the SMR blew up that we're funding. Well, that's significant, Kevin. I'm just a poor, broke down cancer activist with a YouTube camera. You're a billionaire. Come here, Kevin Blanche. John Huntsman, billionaire. Native Utah to Kevin Blanche, native Utah. You know that's significant. You're gonna deal with me. Until I see a statue right here. You're gonna deal with me. You're gonna deal with me. The YouTube video is mightier than the sword. Stop your fucking discrimination against Ogdenites. Just walking in the library, folding paper cranes. You're gonna deal with me. You're gonna deal with me. Yeah, broke out the cancer victim hat. The nurses bought me that. The Weber State nurses bought me that when I was LDSC State Bone Marrow Transplant Center. Stand tuned.